Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com, and in this tutorial I'm going to implement some game states so that the game's going to know when it's running or when it's displaying a tap screen to start message or when it's been lost. And I'm going to go into my game.java here and let's give it a private enum and I'll call this state. And let's say that the various possible states are paused, and pause means that it displays the tap screen to start message, and I'll have one, in which case it's going to say you won or something like that, and lost, in which case it'll say you lost, and let's also of course have running, in which case the game will actually be being played. And we could do something fancier here, like if the game's won, you could count up a certain number of milliseconds, and then after a short pause you could put it back into running or put it into paused or whatever you like. But I'll just do something really simple here, and I'll declare a variable of that type. So I'll say private state with a lowercase s, and I'll set that initially equal to state.paused. And now in draw, I'm going to say here, I'm going to say, we'll lock the canvas in draw, and then I'll say switch state. So I'll switch on the state, and I'll say, in fact, the quick way of doing this is if I just click this warning here, I can say add missing case statements, and it will implement all that for me. And with a switch statement, you don't need to specify the enum type, it kind of automatically knows it. And let's say that if the game is paused, we're going to say draw text tap screen to start. If it's lost, we're going to say you lost an unhappy face. And if the game's been won, if the player won the game, we'll say you won exclamation mark. And if the game is running, let's say draw game. We've got this method draw game, so I'll say draw game and pass it the canvas. And for the default, could just get rid of that really, because if I save it, it's not going to give us a warning, because those are the only possibilities, as we know, so that should do the trick. And in update, we're going to have to do a few things as well. So in the update method here, at the moment I'm doing kind of collision detection and updating the ball and the opponent, but I only want this to happen if the game's running. So let's have a actually I'll make one quick change, which is that draw text should be private and draw game should be private, because I only call these methods internally. Only the draw method should be public out of all the draw methods, because that has to be called from outside the class. And then update, I'm going to have a similar kind of system. Let's have a private update, private void update game long elapsed, and update game is going to do all this. So I'll just copy that out of there, I'll cut it from there and paste it into update game. So I've moved the contents of update into update game, and now I can say switch state, and once again let's put the missing case statements. I'll get rid of the default one, which we don't need, and if the game's running, then I say update game elapsed. And otherwise, what do I do? Well, I want to say that if in either of these cases, if the game has been lost or it's been won or it's paused, I think I'd like to make it so that if the user touches the screen then the game will then start running. So let's have a private void update paused, I'll call it, and I'll pass it long elapsed, although actually I don't think I need to do that, because I'm not going to do anything really fancy here, although I could. I'm going to do something really simple, and I'll just say, in the case that the game's been lost, let's call update paused. In fact, I don't think I even need to do this, because what I have in mind is that if the user touches the screen, so there's an on-touch event, and the game is in one of these states, then it switches into the running state. But I'm not going to really have to do anything in update, I don't think. So maybe it's not necessary really to have this switch. Let's just try saying if state equals state dot running. Let's try this. Then in that case I'll say update game. There we go. Maybe that's simpler, and I'll just get rid of all this. And then so we update only does something if the game is running, otherwise it doesn't do anything. And probably just get rid of that, actually. We don't need it. Yeah. Okay, so and then in on touch event, what I'll do is here I need to say if state equals game dot running, game equals state dot running. So if the state is running, then we're going to say player dot set position. Else, what I want to do is if it's not running, it must be paused. So either it's saying you won or you lost, or tap screen to start. And in either case, if the user touches the screen, I probably want to switch the state to running. So I want to say state equals, whoops, that should be a capital S there. State equals state dot running, state dot running. So I switch it into the running state. And now we need the code that so at the moment the way this works is it starts off paused, and then when it's paused, what it draws is it draws tap screen to start, and when the user taps the screen it gets an on touch event, and we need to return true from there to receive drag event successfully. So let's, oh no we don't, this is, I'm thinking of the view touch event which returns true. Okay, so so the game starts paused, the player touches the screen, and that then the game receives a touch event and it goes into the running state and it draws the game. And we want to then say, okay, what if the game's won or lost? We have to detect if it's been won or lost and switch it into the won state or the lost state, and in that state then we're gonna basically say it will be caught by this else clause here, and if the user touches the screen it'll be set back to running. So the remaining bit to do is that we have to make sure, we have to detect if the game has been lost or won and set it into the state won or lost, and then the player will get out of that state by touching the screen, which will then set it back to running, which I think is workable. So let's take a look. We've already got the code that detects if the game's lost or won, and in there we just have to say state equals state dot lost, or if it's won we say state equals state dot won. And now I think the game is complete as regards the graphics. We still have sound to do, but let's check, because probably I've forgotten something. And there's no score or anything in this game, and of course there's an absolute ton of things that you could do to make this game a lot nicer and more interesting. All kinds of things. I mean, the possibilities are literally endless, but I just want to create a simple demo here, so we'll stick with this. Okay, so it says tap screen to start, so I'll tap the screen and now it's running. And actually one thing I forgot probably was to reinitialize the game. the emulator is not keeping up with my phone, and it's really annoying. My phone is actually playing, so now you can see it, and I lost, and it says you lost. And now the thing is that if I touch the screen, I've still lost because I haven't reinitialized the ball. So one thing I need to do is we know that we've lost because it detects that the left-hand edge of the ball is further left than the right-hand side of the bat, and that's how it knows that it's lost. So in the case that the game is lost or won, we need to make sure that the ball is moved back to the center. So if we look at ball now, what actually puts it in the center is the init method, which is here. So I need to give it some kind of move to center method or something like that. And this stuff here is actually moving it to the center. So let's give it a public void move to center, or maybe I could call it init position is maybe nicer. And then I could take this positioning stuff out of here and put it in init position, and we'll just call it here and save that, and it all looks okay. And then also the bats probably should be moved back to the center, and we've got some stuff, so we don't need to worry about the X position, but the Y position is being set here in bat.java. It's being set to the center of the screen vertically. So let's also have a public void init position here for the bat, because it would be nice to move it into the starting position again and cut that from there and call init position, and then just paste that code that initializes the vertical position into there. And now if we go back to game.java, we need to make sure that if the game is won or lost, we reinitialize the positions. Let's give it a private void init object positions, and then we can just say ball.init position, player.init position, and opponent.init position. And this could be used. Well, we don't need to use it. We don't really need to use it in init because we're calling it in the init methods themselves. But we are going to have to call it if the game's won or lost. We want to reinitialize the position. So let's say that, or we could make it that before the game starts running, then we initialize the position. But it's probably simpler just to do it here. So if we lose the game, we need to reinitialize the positions of everything to avoid it getting into a circle of constantly thinking it's won or lost. So we just need to move the objects back to their starting positions after the game is lost or won. And I think we're there, hopefully. Let's take a look at the emulator. Sorry, not the emulator, the screencast. Okay, here we go. And I tap the screen to start, and the screencast, yeah, it's catching up, which is good. And I'll bounce the ball once. And to make this an interesting game, this is going to have to be speeded up, but I'm just going to leave it here for debugging purposes. And let's lose the game deliberately. It says you lost. And then I can touch the screen and it starts again with the ball in a position, and so on. And sooner or later, if I wait long enough, the opponent will lose, which we've already seen happening. But that could be quite a while, so I won't bore you with waiting for it. But I think that all works, and so I'll leave it there. And you need to make sure, of course, stuff like if you go to the home screen of your phone and you go back to the game, you resume it, you need to make sure that it seems to behave nicely, which I think it does. It could always use more testing, but it seems okay, and make sure you can like start it from the icon successfully and stuff like that. Okay, so that's it for this time, and in the next tutorial I think we're probably going to start looking at sound, which we may get through in one tutorial, but I'm not sure. So that's it for this time, and until next time, happy coding.